The first day of the startup, Anna Parker still remembered the scent of rain-soaked concrete on the morning she and Jessica Wright opened the doors to their first office in downtown Seattle. The space was barely more than a converted storeroom above a bakery, its single narrow window fogged by coastal mist. But to the two women, it felt like the top floor of a skyscraper. Anna had met Jessica as a nervous sophomore at Roosevelt High, when Jessica, confident and fiercely independent, defended Anna from a group of older students mocking her vintage laptop. That quick act of loyalty sealed a friendship built on trust, midnight brainstorming sessions, and the balance of Anna's quiet determination with Jessica's relentless ambition. By the time they graduated from the University of Washington, they'd spent countless hours hunched over laptops at coffee shops, sketching app ideas on napkins, arguing over algorithms, and dreaming of launching a company that would make a difference. Both had been told that tech startups were a man's world, and that two young women didn't stand a chance. Instead of being discouraged, that challenge became their rallying cry. Their company, named Lumina Solutions, was born from a shared belief in technology's power to simplify everyday life. With barely enough savings to last 3 months, Anna took charge of product development, her logical mind untangling every coding knot. Jessica embraced the chaos of business, cold-calling potential clients, drafting their first pitch deck, and charming every landlord who doubted their dream. The days turned into nights as they worked through bugs, missed family gatherings, and lived on takeout. Once, after a failed demo sent their only prototype crashing, Anna broke down in tears. Jessica sat beside her on the scuffed wooden floor, made a joke about greatness starting from a pile of broken circuit boards, and together they started over with renewed grit. Seattle's startup ecosystem, fast-paced yet cutthroat, wasn't kind to newcomers. Investors dismissed them as inexperienced. Partners flaked. Some friends faded away, unable to understand their laser focus. But Anna and Jessica became each other's anchor, celebrating every small win. Their first paying customer, a local bookstore owner, the day a respected mentor called their idea promising. Despite the struggle, their friendship flourished. They shared everything: doubts, laughter, late-night ramen runs, silent stares across the room when words failed, and a mutual promise that no matter how tough things got, they'd fight for their vision and for each other. As the city's evening lights flickered on outside their window, Anna gazed around the tiny office and allowed herself a moment of cautious hope. Here, amid cluttered desks and empty coffee cups, two best friends were daring to believe that the world might one day take them seriously. And as Jessica raised a toast with cheap, store-bought champagne, Anna smiled, feeling invincible, unaware that the bonds forged in struggle would soon be tested by ambition, success, and secrets they could not yet imagine. Success and the first warning signs. In the blink of an eye, the momentum around Lumina Solutions began to shift. Months of grueling, thankless work were finally bearing fruit. Anna and Jessica scarcely recognized the faces that now filled their once empty office. Young engineers and marketing grads buzzed with energy, their laptops blinking late into the evening. The air smelled different now, a blend of burnt coffee, anticipation, and the undeniable thrill of progress. The product, an intuitive app aimed at streamlining small business workflows, caught the attention of a well-known angel investor in Seattle's vibrant tech community. Demo days became more frequent. For the first time, Anna felt the exhilarating rush of possibility as their inbox flooded with requests for meetings and beta signups from businesses all over the city. Jessica's calendar filled with interviews and networking events. She thrived under the newfound spotlight: slick pitches, bold handshakes, always the first to speak and the last to leave the room. Anna admired her friend's effortless charm and envied the confidence that seemed to grow with every achievement. Success, however, arrived hand in hand with subtle shifts in their partnership. Jessica, always shrewd, began to manage deals and financials with increasing autonomy. She insisted on handling investor relations herself, arguing that she knew the language, while Anna could focus on scaling the tech. Anna, grateful for the division of labor, didn't argue. At first, the urgent tasks and looming deadlines left little room for questions. It started with small discrepancies. Anna noticed meeting schedules that Jessica hadn't mentioned, and emails about legal paperwork that mysteriously bypassed her inbox. Once, Anna accidentally received a forwarded message about equity allocation, addressed only to Jessica. When she brought it up, Jessica brushed it aside with a quick explanation about just formalities, her tone breezy, but her eyes momentarily guarded. The hustle was relentless. Anna tried to suppress a creeping unease, attributing it to growing pains and her own inexperience with business operations. Colleagues occasionally dropped vague comments about changes Jessica had authorized or asked Anna about decisions she hadn't known were on the table. "You two always seem so in sync," one developer joked after a last-minute project pivot. Anna forced a laugh but felt a chill run down her spine. Some warning signs came in whispers. Mia, their earliest hire, quietly mentioned that she'd noticed Jessica holding private conversations with one of the investors after hours. An old mentor reached out to Anna, congratulating her on Lumina's recent valuation, news she hadn't heard before. More and more, Jessica navigated closed-door meetings and invited Anna in only when absolutely necessary. Despite these oddities, the company continued its meteoric rise. Their app made headlines in local tech blogs, endorsements rolled in, and the bank balance grew. Yet the higher they climbed, the more distanced Anna felt from the day-to-day decisions that had once belonged to both of them. She busied herself with coding and product launches, tucking her worries away, determined not to taint their hard-won success with suspicion. Only at night, when the office lights dimmed and the city's rain pattered against the small window, did Anna let doubt creep in. She replayed conversations, reread old emails, and tried to convince herself that this was just the cost of rapid growth. But the small office no longer felt like the safe haven they'd built together. It felt, instead, as if something essential was quietly, inexorably slipping away. The painful discovery. The autumn air in Seattle had taken on a chill, and with it, Anna noticed a heaviness she couldn't quite shake. Her days were filled with endless lines of code and urgent product launches. But beneath the surface, an unspoken anxiety tugged at her. The camaraderie she and Jessica once shared seemed to have faded into the background, replaced by quick updates in passing and the sharp click of Jessica's office door locking behind her. One gray Monday, Anna arrived early, intent on clearing her head before the team trickled in. The office was unusually quiet. Only the hum of electronic screens and the faint aroma of last night's coffee left behind. While searching her desk for a misplaced notebook, Anna stumbled across a folded piece of paper wedged between two stacks of contracts. Its crisp, official letterhead caught her attention instantly. Curious, she unfolded it, and as her eyes scanned the first few lines, the room seemed to tilt. It was a filed amendment, dated 2 weeks earlier, transferring all company shares previously registered jointly to Jessica's name. Anna barely registered the words, her mind spinning as she processed their implications. This had to be a mistake. A clerical error, surely, or perhaps something Jessica meant to discuss, but hadn't gotten the chance. Anna's hands trembled as she opened her laptop and dug through old emails, legal documents, anything that might confirm or contradict what she'd just seen. Page after page of notarized files, a digital trail she'd never been copied on, surfaced before her eyes. Each new document was another blow. Signatures she didn't recognize, forms with her name typed in but not signed by her, and meeting notes she'd never attended. Panic quickly turned to anger. She scoured her text message history with Jessica, hoping for some explanation. Nothing but mundane updates and platitudes. Anna's chest tightened as realization dawned. This wasn't an oversight or a misunderstanding. It was a calculated betrayal. Unable to contain herself, Anna marched to Jessica's office, barely knocking before stepping inside. Jessica looked up from her computer with an expression that flickered. Brief surprise, then composure. Anna, voice shaking, confronted her best friend. She held up the documents and demanded answers. Jessica's response was chillingly measured. "You're overreacting, Anna. These are just formalities. I'm handling things for both of us, like I always have." But there was a trace of something else in her eyes. Guilt, maybe, or that cold efficiency Anna had come to dread. The confrontation escalated quickly. Anna pressed for the truth, her questions growing sharper. Jessica's defense grew vague, evasive. "It's to protect us," she claimed. But to Anna, the words rang hollow. She realized she was staring at a stranger, a woman who'd quietly rewritten their history for her own gain. When Anna left the room, her world felt irrevocably altered. She wandered through the office in a daze, past the cheerful chatter of employees, the tangible evidence of everything she and Jessica had built together. Each familiar object felt foreign now. Her favorite coffee mug, the wall of sticky notes covered in old ideas, even the faded poster that once inspired their first pitch deck. That night, Anna sat alone staring out at Seattle's rain-slicked streets, her mind replaying every memory, every sacrifice she'd made for Lumina Solutions. The shame and sense of loss were almost unbearable. She felt betrayed, not just by Jessica, but by the version of herself that had believed so completely in trust and in their partnership. For the first time since their journey began, Anna couldn't see a way forward. The life she'd built, the loyalty she'd treasured, all of it had been swept out from under her, replaced by the sting of heartbreak and an emptiness she did not know how to fill. Alone and rising again. Anna had always believed that the worst loneliness was being misunderstood in a crowd, but nothing compared to the emptiness that filled her after Jessica's betrayal. It began quietly, like Seattle's persistent drizzle, barely noticeable at first, but slowly and relentlessly, it seeped into every corner of her life. Days bled into nights. The familiar rhythms of work, the keyboard clatter, the conference room laughter, the ritual of refilling the coffee pot, became hollow performances. The shock from that morning's discovery lingered, vibrating underneath every interaction. For a while, Anna went through the motions on autopilot. She answered emails, reviewed code, showed up to the stand-ups, and nodded through meetings with the rest of Lumina Solutions' team. But her mind wandered, knocked off center. Every passing glance, every hushed conversation among colleagues suddenly felt suspicious. Had they known? Were they complicit, or merely as blindsided as she was? What hurt most was how quickly the world around her seemed to contract. A few old friends, sensing her withdrawal, sent polite messages. "Hope you're doing okay." But their words skimmed across the surface. Anna realized, bitterly, that so much of her social circle had revolved around the company, and by extension, around Jessica. Invitations to after-work drinks began to exclude her name. Even neutral acquaintances at networking events greeted her with polite sympathy, as if she'd been branded by humiliation itself. Worse still, she noticed subtle shifts in the professional sphere. Long-trusted clients asked for meetings with Jessica alone, or spoke about new directives Anna hadn't approved. Vendors reached out less. Investors who once praised her technical prowess now sent form emails, all but confirming that Jessica had been quietly removing her from key communications for weeks, if not months. There were nights when Anna lay awake, staring at the pale glow of her phone's screen, scrolling through months of old texts with Jessica. She mapped the slow erosion of affection, the replaced exclamation points, the missing emojis, the abruptness that had crept into even their simplest exchanges. "Let's discuss this tomorrow." "Busy now." "I'll handle it." Her mind twisted every memory, rummaging for warning signs she hadn't dared acknowledge before. Had she ignored her instincts out of loyalty? Had she been naive, or worse, complicit in her own undoing by refusing to ask hard questions? Despair draped itself over her life like a heavy blanket. Some days, she barely had the energy to get out of bed, her body weighed down by uncertainty and regret. She skipped meals, let her laundry pile up in the corner, and lost herself in work. Anything to numb the ache. But even code, once her sanctuary, offered little solace. Every algorithm, every user story, every deadline now served as a painful reminder of the dream she'd built with Jessica, and how easily it had been snatched away. Yet, in the thick of this bleakness, small sparks of resilience began to flare. On one particularly raw morning, Anna found herself sitting at a park bench, rain pattering on the canopy of leaves overhead. She watched a pair of crows bicker over a discarded sandwich, their motives blunt and transparent. She thought about how she and Jessica had once found strength in each other's honesty, how their journey had started not with lofty investor pitches, but with real conversations about struggle and hope. For the first time since the betrayal, Anna felt the stir of anger, not just at Jessica, but at herself for letting grief dull her spirit. She stood up, wiped her cheeks, and returned home determined to take stock of what she still had. That evening, Anna pulled out her battered old notebook, the same one she and Jessica had used to brainstorm Lumina Solutions on napkins and coffee-stained pages. She forced herself to reread old notes and goals. She listed, as methodically as a scientist, every obstacle she had ever overcome, from learning to code in high school with hand-me-down hardware to pitching their first client. She realized, with a bittersweet pang, that resilience was wired into her DNA. She didn't need permission to fight back. As the days passed, the pain didn't vanish, but it transformed. Sorrow gave way to a fierce, pragmatic clarity. Anna began to notice cracks in Jessica's new regime at Lumina. Mia, the company's first developer and Anna's mentor in her earliest days, seemed unusually withdrawn. Anna spotted worry lines etched into Mia's face during a team meeting and, on an impulse, sent her a discreet message. "Can we talk? Off the record." To Anna's surprise, Mia agreed to meet for coffee after work. That evening was a turning point. Over mugs of bitter black coffee, Mia confided that she too felt sidelined. "Things have changed since Jessica took the reins," Mia admitted, voice low. "She's making promises to investors I don't agree with. Cutting corners on development, it feels wrong." Anna's heart pounded as she recognized the lifeline Mia was offering. Instead of pouring out her woes, Anna shifted gears. She asked questions, listened, proposed careful hypotheticals. Within the hour, they had outlined a mutual understanding. Discreetly, they would both start keeping better records of the changes happening within the company. Emboldened, Anna carefully traced a path through her damaged network. She reached out to former colleagues who had left in frustration during recent months. Many responded to her overtures with guarded curiosity, some with outright relief. It quickly became clear that Jessica's leadership style had alienated more people than Anna had realized. The more Anna listened, the more she found herself piecing together the outline of something bigger than a single betrayal. A pattern of unchecked power, fiscal recklessness, and empty promises. During long, sleepless nights, Anna began constructing a digital archive. Emails, comments on code repositories, Slack message threads, contract discrepancies, financial statements obtained from the cloud. No longer the naive co-founder, she approached the project with methodical rigor, checking and cross-checking every lead. The process itself was empowering. For every sleepless night and every pang of yearning for the friendship she had lost, Anna replaced one fragment of pain with newfound resolve. Crucially, Anna learned to let go of the illusion that she could do everything alone. She drew on the advice of her few true supporters, and, most painful but necessary of all, she let herself grieve. She wrote unsent letters to Jessica, pouring every emotion onto the page, burning them afterward as a private ritual of farewell. As winter approached, the air turned sharper, and so did Anna's sense of purpose. Each morning, she forced herself to exercise, even just a short walk in. The drizzle. She made herself eat, even if it was just a bowl of ramen standing at the kitchen counter. She reached out to local professional groups, joined online forums, and soon found herself offering advice to strangers, rediscovering her voice through helping others. In those months of isolation, Anna underwent transformation. The office that had once seemed cold and alien grew familiar again, not because she regained her old life, but because she chose to remake it in her own image. The betrayal would always hurt, but it would no longer define her. New connections blossomed in unexpected places. At a tech meetup, Anna met Lauren, a CEO from a rival firm with her own history of climbing back after loss. Over the next few weeks, they forged a rapport rooted in hard-won respect rather than fear or opportunism. Anna saw the beginnings of a new alliance, one that would one day help her reclaim not just a company, but her sense of self. By the end of that season, Anna was no longer the ghost wandering through shattered dreams. She was a woman tempered by pain, emboldened by injustice, and unafraid to rise again. The loneliness still lingered, but it had lost its power. In its place stood something fierce, determined, and wholly her own, a promise not to let betrayal be the epilogue of her story, but the prelude to something stronger. The plan for retaliation. After months spent in the shadows of humiliation and heartbreak, Anna finally reached a threshold where anger and determination eclipsed despair. In the crisp, gray dawns of Seattle, she no longer felt like a silent ghost wandering through someone else's story. The pieces of her old life had shattered, but now she was gathering each shard to build something new, not just for herself, but for all the people Jessica's ambition had cast aside. Anna's first step was cold and methodical. She mapped out every documented misstep, contradiction, or thread of dishonesty she could trace to Jessica. The digital archive she built in sleepless nights became a living testament to unjust deals, questionable modifications to legal documents, and emails revealing a pattern of financial maneuvering behind Anna's back. Anna cataloged every instance where Jessica prioritized personal gain over company welfare, rushed product launches, backdoor promises to investors, budget cuts that endangered software quality, and staff layoffs with no explanation. As the picture of Jessica's misconduct grew ever clearer, Anna realized she now had leverage, but using it would require a bold and nuanced plan. She knew a direct confrontation would be pointless. Jessica was too practiced at spin and self-preservation. So Anna decided to let the evidence guide her and to build strategic alliances that would turn the tide in her favor. Her first real breakthrough came on a rainy Friday evening in the unlikely setting of a crowded Pike Place coffee shop. Anna had agreed, somewhat nervously, to meet Lauren Serrano, CEO of a rival tech company. They'd crossed paths before at startup events, but never in private. Lauren, tall and unflappable with silvery streaks in her dark hair, opened the conversation simply. "I hear you've been having a rough run. Tell me your side, and tell me what you want." In that 2-hour conversation, Anna did something she hadn't done in months. She spoke openly about her anger, her loss, and the bitter taste of betrayal. She laid out the facts, showing Lauren edited contracts and internal emails. In turn, Lauren explained that she, too, had left a company she co-founded, after being cheated by a close colleague. Lauren's empathy was genuine, but so was her business acumen. She listened, took notes, and weighed the risks and upsides. Jessica hungers for recognition at any cost, Lauren finally said, her gaze sharp. But a company is only as strong as the trust it inspires. If you want to turn this around, you'll need more than evidence. You'll need allies and timing. When would you strike, if given the chance? Anna sipped her lukewarm coffee, thinking. The next investor quarterly is 3 months away. That's when all the eyes are on the financials, projections, legal compliance. If I show what I know then, I'll have maximum impact, but only if I can rally support. With Lauren's network and experience, Anna began to discreetly reach out to former clients, vendors, and staff members who'd been dismissed, or who left under dubious circumstances. The response surprised her. Dozens were willing to talk, and many had quietly harbored their own suspicions about Jessica's methods. Anna learned that Jessica had made promises of equity and bonuses she never fulfilled, taken shortcuts with licensing, and even misrepresented software capabilities during demos. Privately, Anna met with Lumina's earliest hires in quiet corners of Seattle's cafes. With each meeting, she gathered more uncomfortable details. Stories of developers being pressured to fudge milestone reports, marketing staff ordered to exaggerate user engagement, and QA leads who felt threatened for raising concerns about security flaws. Anna insisted that everything shared remain confidential, for now. With the coalition forming, Anna and Lauren worked together to draft a plan for coordinated action. Their strategy hinged on 3 pillars. Anna and Lauren conducted mock interviews, preparing not only for the public conversation but for tough questions they might face from investors and board members. Lauren lent Anna her PR consultant, who helped her frame the narrative as one of justice and renewal, rather than bitterness. The emotional side was never far beneath the surface. Anna confided that she still dreamed about the early days with Jessica. Late nights laughing over code, shared ceilings of hope, and that exposing her friend was not a triumph, but a necessity. Lauren empathized, reminding Anna that true loyalty sometimes meant refusing to enable harm. As the quarterly approached, Anna's days grew longer and more focused. She reconnected with Mia, her oldest ally in the company, and shared the plan. Mia, moved by Anna's courage and clarity, agreed to rally support quietly from other staff. Together, they tracked ongoing questionable decisions by Jessica, especially any activities that could be construed as fraud or breach of duty. The final weeks were a blur of encrypted group chats, document reviews, and mounting tension. Anna met regularly with Lauren and a small circle of trusted advisors, rehearsing what she would say when the time was right. The coalition spread quietly, aided by word of mouth and a spirit of shared indignation. Anna took extra precautions. She stored digital evidence in multiple secure locations. She backed up witness statements with permission and kept a meticulous log of all conversations about the plan. Some nights, paranoia crept in. Would Jessica sense a shift and do something drastic? Would Anna's allies lose their nerve? She reminded herself that movements born out of principle, not revenge, have a power all their own. On the eve of the quarterly, Anna looked out across the city from her small apartment. The lights below seemed less distant. She understood, for the first time, that her pain was not an endpoint, but a catalyst. In standing up for herself and the loyal team members betrayed by Jessica's greed, Anna was also opening a door for redemption and for transformation. But even as she readied herself for battle, Anna vowed that victory wouldn't mean becoming like the person who had hurt her. Whatever tomorrow held, she would fight with transparency and fairness, trusting that when the truth finally surfaced, she, and everyone Jessica had wronged, could begin again. The unexpected leverage. In the long weeks leading up to Lumina Solutions' pivotal investor meeting, Anna moved with quiet precision. Her days seemed divided between her formal duties at the company, where Jessica still outwardly held command, and the clandestine task force she'd assembled in the shadows. She wasn't just pursuing justice for herself anymore. She was fighting for everyone battered by Jessica's ambition, and for a vision of Lumina that could still be redeemed. But as the date for the quarterly investor review loomed, Anna knew she needed something more. A decisive edge. A move that would shift not only perceptions, but power itself. The evidence she had amassed was damning, but in the corporate world, facts alone didn't always win battles. Allies could hesitate, media narratives could twist, and even the most compelling documentation could be drowned out by insider spin. Anna had learned to expect the unpredictable, but she hadn't anticipated the wild card that was about to fall into her hands. A message from the margins. The break came on a stormy Tuesday night, with Seattle's rain hammering the city so fiercely that hardly anyone lingered in the office past dusk. Anna was almost ready to call it a day, sorting through email threads, when her inbox pinged with a message from an address she didn't recognize at first. As she read the subject, "Confidential regarding Jessica's deal with Orion Systems," her pulse quickened. The sender was Samir Patel, a former vendor agent who'd parted ways with Lumina 9 months prior after a mysterious contract cancellation. The message was short and cautious, only hinting at critical information about a hidden side deal Jessica had negotiated with a major competitor, Orion Systems, a conglomerate notorious for acquiring startups only to gut their unique technology. Anna responded immediately. Over encrypted messaging, Samir revealed what he'd been reluctant to state openly for fear of legal ramifications. Jessica had been in quiet contact with Orion's acquisition team, sharing advance access to Lumina's unreleased features and negotiating a personal buyout, all while presenting an image of steady growth to the board and staff. What Anna heard next was both shocking and galvanizing. Samir had kept meticulous records, including call logs, email summaries, and most importantly, a signed letter of intent from Jessica herself. In exchange for silencing Samir during the original fallout, Jessica had offered a severance package just generous enough to secure a non-disclosure agreement, but Samir, still stung by betrayal, had never deleted his files. After reading press leaks about Jessica's mismanagement, he decided it was time to act. The coalition grows. Anna wasted no time. She met Samir in the back of an all-night diner off Aurora Avenue, where neon lights flickered above half-empty booths. Samir arrived with a thumb drive and the heavy look of someone choosing principle over convenience. He explained that his loyalty had always been to the people actually building Lumina's products, not to those playing financial chess with their futures. Reviewing the files later, Anna saw everything she needed. Uncompromising proof that Jessica not only violated Lumina's articles of incorporation by acting in secret, but had also endangered every employee's livelihood by jeopardizing the company's independence. There were time-stamped exchanges, drafts of proposed licensing agreements, projections showing how Orion planned to sunset core software, and confidential updates to investors who had never seen the full scope of Jessica's plan. Armed with this new leverage, Anna convened her most trusted group, Mia, Lauren, and several senior engineers who had grown quietly frustrated by Jessica's disregard for transparency. She laid out the evidence, piece by piece. As the implications became clear, so did the mood of the room. Shock gave way to resolve, resolve to unity. "That's more than grounds for removal," Lauren said, her voice measured but fierce. "We're not talking about internal disputes now. These are violations with teeth, both legal and ethical." Shifting the balance of power. The group carefully plotted the next phase. With Samir's testimony and documents added to Anna's existing archive, suddenly Anna held all the cards, but she understood that how she played them mattered as much as whether she won. First, Anna contacted key investors, not in a broad announcement but privately, using Lauren's introductions and the credibility of Lumina's earliest backers. In tense but professional calls, Anna walked them through the facts. It was no longer merely a story of intra-founder drama, but of serious breaches that placed their investments at risk. She assured them that her goal wasn't to destroy Lumina, but to safeguard its future, and that of everyone involved. The response was immediate and dramatic. Several investors, faced with clear evidence that Jessica's negotiations threatened not just Anna, but the entire company, quickly swung their influence behind Anna. For the first time since the betrayal, Jessica lost her aura of invincibility. Rumors spread rapidly through the industry, finding their way onto startup forums and business blogs. The board, hitherto reluctant to wade into internal politics, suddenly demanded emergency meetings. Legal teams were quietly consulted, and whispers of litigation began to circle. Meanwhile, Anna coordinated with trusted journalists in Seattle, sharing carefully redacted versions of key documents to ensure the wider narrative was rooted in truth, not speculation. Lumina's story became a warning and a rallying cry for founders everywhere. A groundswell of support. Perhaps most meaningful to Anna was the reaction of Lumina's current and former employees. People who had left or been pushed out in frustration now came forward, vouching for Anna's integrity and, in some cases, adding their own records to the cache of evidence. They organized a petition in support of leadership change, and when it circulated internally, 2/3 of the staff signed within 24 hours. In the days leading up to the investor review, Anna saw Jessica's once commanding presence wilt. She watched as Jessica increasingly isolated herself, taking phone calls behind closed doors, her public tone shifting from arrogance to defensiveness. Meetings became tense, even awkward, as board members openly challenged Jessica, sometimes citing details only Anna could have provided. Jessica sensed the shifting winds, but she had nowhere to turn. Her single-minded tactics had left her almost entirely without friends at Lumina. Readying for the showdown. Finally, the day before the investor meeting, Anna received a call from the board's new legal counsel. "We're aware of the documentation and the NDAs potentially barring disclosure. Are you prepared to present your full case with counsel present?" Anna, steadied by months of preparation, answered, "Yes, I just want the truth heard and the company put back on a right track." That night, as the city glittered with reflected rain, Anna reflected on everything that had brought her here. Loneliness, heartbreak, mentorship, and now a growing camaraderie. Guilt and grief occasionally knocked at the door, especially as she remembered the early trust between her and Jessica. But with the weight of an unexpected ally and a chorus of supporters, she felt, for the first time in a long while, hopeful, even powerful. Whatever the next day brought, Anna knew the playing field had changed. The unexpected leverage she'd found in a forgotten vendor's conscience had tipped the scales, and for the first time, it was Jessica, not Anna, who would have to answer for her actions. Turning the tables, the day of the investor meeting dawned gray and blustery, rain streaking the glass facade of Lumina Solutions' office tower with relentless force. Anna's heart pounded as she watched the city stir beneath a thick blanket of storm clouds, a fitting backdrop for the tempest about to unfold inside. Gone was the timid engineer who once tiptoed around difficult conversations. Today, Anna stood ready, evidence-packed briefcase clutched tightly in hand, backed by a coalition she never could have imagined even 3 months before. Inside the boardroom, a heavy hush cloaked everything. Jessica sat at the head of the table, looking pale and brittle beneath her usual mask of confidence. On her right, the company's counsel shuffled a set of manila folders nervously. Investors dialed in from across the country, their faces dispassionate and remote on video screens, unmistakably impatient for clarity. Lauren arrived just as the meeting began, offering Anna a subtle, supportive nod. The confrontation, The board chair opened with customary pleasantries, but the tension was palpable, every eye flicking from Jessica to Anna and back again. It was Jessica who tried to steer the agenda, summarizing quarterly results and pitching new partnerships in a voice whose tremors she couldn't quite disguise. Anna listened, jaw clenched, waiting for the moment she'd rehearsed for countless sleepless nights. When the floor opened for questions, Anna cleared her throat, the sound abrupt in the stagnant air. "If I may, I'd like to address some concerns. Concerns that go beyond revenue." She laid out her documentation with calm precision, projecting key documents onto the boardroom screen. Financial anomalies, unapproved deal proposals, emails hinting at Jessica's covert negotiations with Orion Systems. One by one, allies stepped forward. Mia read from her own logs, confirming the manipulation of staff contracts and the deliberate sidelining of technical teams. Lauren spoke boldly about industry ethics, and several former staffers, now dialed in via video, confirmed disturbing patterns in hiring and budgetary promises. Each fact was meticulously referenced, each damning detail supported by clear evidence rather than speculation. As Anna unveiled Samir's files, the confidential letter of intent, call notes, and internal projections outlining Orion's plan to gut Lumina's flagship product, a hush swept the room, followed by a wave of shocked murmurs. Jessica's mask slipped for a moment, panic flickering across her face before she tried to spin the story. "I acted for the good of the company. We needed a contingency. I had to make tough calls." But the evidence spoke for itself. Anna, once excluded from every major decision, now controlled the room. The board pressed Jessica with hard questions about her lack of disclosure and her clear violation of fiduciary duty. For once, Jessica's charisma failed her. She stammered through half-truths, her composure crumbling as the legal team began to discuss potential breaches of contract, ethical violations, and the risk of lawsuits for her personal gain at the company's expense. Public reckoning. What unfolded next was both swift and merciless. The board, driven by investor outrage and the weight of Anna's coalition, voted to suspend Jessica's authority on the spot pending a formal investigation. Within hours, an internal communication went company-wide. Jessica was stepping down from all leadership roles, effective immediately. News of the boardroom drama leaked to local business blogs and then to national media within the day. The story of two co-founders, once inseparable, now locked in a power struggle, became a symbol in the startup world for both vulnerability and accountability. Reporters clamored for Anna's version, drawn to the narrative of a quiet technical leader forced into the limelight by injustice. Jessica, facing public humiliation, mounting legal bills, and the possibility of personal bankruptcy, saw her allies dwindle to almost none. Investors pulled support, former friends retreated, and her inbox, once filled with congratulations and invitations, overflowed with demands for answers and settlements. Anna, meanwhile, was flooded with messages from past and present colleagues. Some offered congratulations. Others, perhaps more meaningfully, thanked her for saving both the company and their own sense of what honest work should look like. The groundswell of internal support re-energized Anna, but it didn't erase the bitterness beneath her victory. Aftermath and reflection. With the board's immediate crisis contained and a temporary restructuring plan announced, Anna found herself back in the familiar territory of responsibility. But now, the role was hers alone. She was named interim CEO, tasked with holding the company together while formal investigations proceeded and the wounds of the past year began to heal. Despite her triumph, Anna couldn't shake a sense of melancholy. Restoring trust would take time. In quiet moments, she revisited the artifacts of her friendship with Jessica. Their early brainstorm notebooks, faded photos from launch day, the silly post-it notes they'd once swapped with inside jokes. Anna had thought that uncovering the truth would bring closure, but in many ways, it left her with a larger, more complicated ache. She knew that the betrayal had changed her, not just as a founder, but as a friend and as a leader. Anna also made it clear to the board and all employees this reckoning was not about revenge. She addressed the company in a town hall meeting, speaking honestly about the darkness they'd endured and the importance of collective healing. Our culture must be grounded in transparency, respect, and shared vision. We cannot rebuild on secrets and blame, she said, voice steady but eyes shining with emotion. Over the weeks that followed, Anna worked tirelessly to re-engage shaken employees and nervous partners. She reinstated team members whom Jessica had pushed aside, negotiated fair settlements for those who left in the wake of the scandal, and set up systems for anonymous reporting to ensure that power could never again be hoarded in secret. Importantly, she cultivated an environment where dissent was not only tolerated, but welcomed. A hard-earned lesson from her months spent in the dark. Not a perfect ending. As the dust settled, Anna regained her company's trust and the loyalty of its people, but the glow of victory was muted. She found herself reflecting often late at night, standing by the lone window in her now somewhat larger office, Seattle's neon rain reflecting in her tired eyes. Some wounds, she knew, would never heal perfectly. Yet for the first time in months, possibility returned. A belief, however fragile, that the company she'd once built from nothing could have a future rooted in courage and honesty. And somewhere in the swirl of conflicting feelings, vindication, grief, resilience, and hope, Anna finally understood. True leadership was not about banishing risk or pain. It was about facing them head-on, owning her scars, and pressing forward, no matter how heavy the cost. Facing old feelings. The days after the boardroom reckoning blurred together. A swirl of revised contracts, cautious optimism, and the relentless trudge of healing. But as the weeks wore on, Anna realized that true closure was more complicated than corporate victories or public vindication. Beneath her growing confidence as interim CEO lay a tangle of old emotions: love, anger, bitterness, and grief, all connected to the person she had once trusted most in the world. It began with a single message on a quiet Sunday morning. Anna had just settled in with a rare moment of silence, the Seattle sky outside a patchwork of gray and pale blue. She was scrolling through her backlog of emails, a ritual more soothing than it once had been, when she saw an unread message from Jessica. The subject line was simple. Anna's finger hovered over the keyboard. Part of her wanted to delete the message unread to barricade herself against any intrusion by her former friend. But another part, gentler, stubbornly hopeful, ached for some explanation, some final act of understanding. After minutes that felt like hours, Anna typed a reply. They met 2 days later, after dusk, in a small neighborhood cafe far from the bustle of tech offices and investor chatter. Jessica arrived first, looking diminished and uneasy, her once impeccable poise replaced by nervous fidgeting. Anna hesitated in the doorway, then forced herself forward, determined to listen even if she wasn't ready to forgive. "Thank you for coming," Jessica began, her voice so soft Anna barely heard. "I don't deserve your time, but I needed to see you, to explain, if I even can." For a long time, neither spoke. The silence between them throbbed with memories, late-night coding sessions, impromptu celebrations, the laughter that used to come so easily. Anna felt the ache of nostalgia even as fresh hurt threatened to cloud her mind. Jessica finally looked up, her eyes rimmed red. "I'm sorry, Anna. I kept telling myself there was no right time to explain. that you'd be hurt no matter what I said, so I kept putting it off and making things worse. I let my fear of losing everything push me into making the worst choices of my life. Anna listened, torn between skepticism and a flicker of old empathy. Words came out colder than she meant. You could have told me. I was there. We built Lumina together. I would have understood almost anything except being shut out. Jessica shook her head. I wasn't thinking about us. I was thinking about survival. The investors were pushing, and I got scared. Scared that if I didn't act fast, we'd lose the company. I told myself I could fix it later, that I'd bring you in once things were stable. But the lies grew, and the gap between us widened. And then, I just kept digging deeper. I know I can't undo any of it. Anna clasped her hands together to keep them steady. Was it just fear? Or was it ambition too? Did you really think you were stronger alone? Jessica closed her eyes. Maybe a bit of both. At first I thought I was saving us. Then I started believing I was the reason we'd ever succeed. That pride. Her voice cracked. It blinded me. I'm sorry. For the company, for our friends, for you, especially for you. I broke something that wasn't mine to break. The confession hung in the air, fragile and raw. Anna's mind flashed back over the past year, the excitement of their first prototype, the shared ramen dinners, the thrill of winning their first client. She remembered all the quiet, invisible threads that bound them, not just as co-founders, but as friends, sometimes even as sisters. For the first time since the betrayal, Anna allowed herself to mourn that loss instead of only fighting it. What followed was not an easy conversation. Anna asked direct, sometimes painful questions. She didn't hesitate to name every moment she'd felt betrayed, abandoned, or humiliated. Jessica answered without defensiveness. No excuses, only regret. At times, they both wept, part for the ruined partnership, part for what it still meant to them as individuals. Gradually, the tone shifted. Jessica spoke of her plans to make amends, not in grand gestures, but in quiet actions, relinquishing all residual claims on Lumina, offering public acknowledgement of Anna's leadership, and taking personal responsibility for the chaos she'd left behind. I can't fix what I did, but I can try to be a better person moving forward, she said. I know you owe me nothing, and I won't ask for forgiveness. I only hope we can remember what was good too. Anna sighed, feeling the weight of both anger and compassion inside her chest. Forgiveness isn't a switch I can flip, she admitted, but I don't want to carry this bitterness either. Not for you, not for me. Maybe someday we can look back and remember that we did build something beautiful before it all went off track. They left the cafe quietly. Anna watched as Jessica walked into the drizzly darkness, her silhouette small beneath the city lights. In that vulnerable, honest moment, Anna realized that letting go did not mean erasing the past. It meant accepting its complexity. In the days that followed, Anna found herself replaying the conversation. She shared its essence with a few close confidants, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing at the bittersweet absurdity of it all. Slowly, she discovered a strange sense of peace. Not a cure for the pain, but acceptance of it as one chapter in her story. Anna also made a conscious decision. She would treat Jessica with fairness, but not naivete. She would allow the possibility for respect to return, while guarding the boundaries needed to protect both herself and the company. In meetings, she urged her team to remember that people are not just the sum of their worst decisions. Healing Lumina's culture, she knew, meant holding on to the good while learning from the hurt. Over time, this approach yielded subtle rewards. Some employees reached out to Jessica, expressed their own feelings, and together they created rituals for closure. Team acknowledgments, letters of gratitude, even quiet farewells. Anna felt the company exhale. As trust grew within Lumina, so did a determined hope. Most importantly, Anna learned to honor the full range of her experience. The loyalty that fueled her early dreams, the betrayal that forced her to grow, and the forgiveness that gave her space to imagine a future less defined by bitterness. She no longer needed to see Jessica as solely a villain or a friend, just a complicated, human part of a complicated, human journey. As Lumina moved toward a new era, Anna allowed herself one last private ritual. Alone in her apartment, she dusted off the original idea notebook she and Jessica had filled with wild visions during their college days. She flipped to a random page, saw a list of offbeat app names, and laughed for the first time in months. A real, unguarded laugh, mingled with a few grateful tears. She closed the book, not out of denial, but out of readiness to write the next chapter, one where old feelings, now faced, could finally rest, and her own story could move forward, lighter and stronger than before. A new beginning. Spring tiptoed into Seattle with soft showers and the promise of renewal. The cherry blossoms outside Lumina's office burst into bloom as if echoing the transformation underway inside. For Anna Parker, these gentle changes in the air carried a deep personal resonance. Her world, once defined by darkness and treachery, now teetered on the edge of hope. Yet starting over was more than a clean break. It was painstaking, vulnerable, and filled with deliberate choices. In the months since Jessica's resignation, Lumina Solutions had weathered its storms. There were rumors, awkward glances at conferences, stinging headlines still echoing through tech blogs, and nervous board meetings where Anna's every decision seemed to be scrutinized. But with each passing week, the company grew sturdier, wounded but not broken, patched up by an evolving sense of honesty and collective purpose. Rebuilding the company. Anna's style as interim CEO bore little resemblance to the old era. She insisted every leadership meeting begin with open forums, a deliberate invitation for questions, dissent, even complaints. Some long-standing employees, still wary, tested these boundaries. Anna listened with genuine attention and never dismissed the discomfort or anger fueling their feedback. Gradually, the culture of Lumina started to thaw. Mistakes were no longer hidden or punished, but discussed candidly and solved as a team. Early on, Anna restructured the hiring process to focus on more diverse perspectives. She recruited new team leads not for pedigree or prestige, but for empathy, resilience, and collaboration. In the break room and Slack channels alike, conversations became more inclusive and vibrant. Junior staff who'd once feared the executive suite now felt empowered to propose bold ideas, sometimes stumbling, sometimes succeeding, but always supported. Weekly town hall meetings became a ritual. Anna updated everyone on the state of the business, never shying away from tough numbers or setbacks. During one session, she openly acknowledged the pain of the past year. We can't erase what's been done, but we can respect each other enough to grow from it together. For the first time in months, genuine laughter and applause filled the room. Anna also established an anonymous reporting channel for grievances, another step to guard against future abuses of power. The feedback was sometimes uncomfortable, but Anna recognized that transparency had to be more than a slogan. She worked with HR to double down on mentorship programs and training for conflict resolution, investing in her people as fervently as she once invested in code. New relationships and old friendships. Embracing change meant risking new connections beyond the shadow of betrayal. Anna found herself gradually opening up again, both professionally and personally. She met Lauren, the CEO of a once competing firm, for coffee every month. Their conversations drifted from business tactics to candid talk of loneliness, resilience, and the strange sisterhood that forms between women who have scraped rock bottom and survived. Lauren, who had once been just an ally, became a friend, then a confidant. Within Lumina, Anna made a point to rekindle relationships with colleagues she'd grown distant from. She invited old friends and former coworkers to back-to-back lunches, not to apologize for the past, but to understand the impact of it. Some needed closure. Others simply wanted recognition for having stayed the course. "We were all hurt in different ways," Anna would say, "but if we're brave enough to stand together now, the company's future will be stronger than any single story." With those who had left amid the chaos, Anna sent handwritten notes, sometimes awkward, sometimes heartfelt. Some responded, surprised and grateful, offering words of encouragement or tentative proposals to collaborate in the future. She gleaned lessons in humility and grace not just from the supporters who stayed, but from those who had walked away. Jessica's journey apart. The hardest chapter to process was Jessica's absence. Anna, after their conversation in the cafe, felt both lighter and older, haunted less by anger, but still wrestling with sadness for what was lost. Jessica sent a brief email one day, confirming she had started fresh at a nonprofit, eager to rebuild her professional reputation step by careful step. Anna wrote back simply. Occasionally, Anna thought of what forgiveness might look like years from now. She didn't expect friendship to return, but neither did she rule out a future where mutual respect, at least, could rest between them. Seeds for the future. With the company's wounds still healing, Anna was cautious about chasing rapid expansion. Instead, she focused on sustainability, rethinking core products, collaborating with beta users, and setting realistic goals. Lumina's next app launched with little fanfare but plenty of heart, shaped by brainstorms from every level of the organization. The reviews were good, not dazzling, but, for Anna, honest feedback meant more than applause. Investors, too, were cautious but intrigued. Anna spent hours at the whiteboard in pitch rooms, laying out not just projections but values, the transparency, learning, and shared vision that would steer Lumina away from previous pitfalls. A few partners shook their heads and left, but others stayed, drawn by Anna's clarity and the sense that this company had learned and truly changed. Beyond the office, Anna's life blossomed with simple joys she'd once neglected. Weekend hikes outside the city, quiet dinners with old friends and new, and spontaneous trips to bookstores where she rediscovered her love of fiction and hand-drawn flowcharts. Each evening before bed, she would jot a note in her weathered notebook, a habit from the early startup days, reminding herself of small victories. A culture of healing and hope. Perhaps the greatest testament to the new era was the subtle shift in employee energy. Instead of watching their backs, people watched out for each other. Feedback became more generous, humor bubbled up in meetings, and slowly, the office walls filled with mementos of both failure and success, reminders that every chapter, even the messy ones, was part of the narrative. One afternoon, Anna called her team into the old conference room, now decorated with sticky notes in a rainbow of colors. She passed around photos from the company's rocky formative years and asked everyone to write down one lesson learned and one hope for the future. The notes ranged from playful, "Always double-check permissions," to poignant, "Mistakes don't break us, they build us if we let them." At the end, Anna stood silently for a moment, then smiled. "This company was born of big dreams and a lot of stubbornness," she said. "We lost our way, but we never lost our ability to learn, or the courage to start again." Not looking back, but never forgetting. As the sun set over the city, Anna paused at the office window, remembering every late-night argument, every tear, and every burst of laughter that had shaped Lumina's journey. She traced a path from pain to resilience, not erasing the past, but using it as fuel for the future. A new beginning didn't mean forgetting what had happened. It meant honoring the struggle and carrying forward the best of what she and her teammates had built. For Anna and for everyone at Lumina Solutions, the next chapter bristled with uncertainty, but also with the hard-won promise that no future would ever be built on secrecy or fear again. And in that place of honesty, possibility, and determined trust, Anna's story and Lumina's truly began anew. Epilogue. If someone had told Anna Parker at the start of it all that her sense of victory would be so intertwined with sorrow, she would have never believed them. Yet, as twilight drenched Seattle in soft lavender and the familiar rumble of distant thunder echoed through the city, Anna found herself alone in her apartment, reflecting on the maze she and Lumina Solutions had traversed. In her hand was the well-worn notebook, the one whose coffee-stained pages bore their earliest hopes, wild projections, and sketches of an improbable future. She sat at her small window, the city's neon lights reflected back in her eyes. Instead of charting a new course or wrestling with uncertainty, Anna let herself linger in a rare, unhurried stillness. Her thoughts drifted not to numbers or deadlines, but to the intangibles, the trust that had once tethered her to Jessica, the illusion of certainty, and the relentless determination it had taken to rise again and again. Tonight, she wrote not code, but a letter. Not to anyone in particular, perhaps to herself, or to Lumina's next generation, or to the echo of her younger self who dared to believe in sisterhood and second chances. Dear friend, there is no algorithm for healing, nor any shortcut through betrayal. When the rug is yanked out from beneath you by the person you trusted most, the first instinct is to mourn not only the loss, but the foolishness of believing in the first place. I know. I've lived it. I thought I would be ruined, that all I'd done and dreamed would come to nothing, buried under the rubble of a trust broken. But I learned, heartbreak is not an ending. It's an invitation. It's easy, after a storm, to build walls. It is much harder and much braver to build bridges. The cracks you try to mask might one day serve as channels for honesty, humility, and, against all odds, hope. Resilience sounds glamorous in theory, but in practice, it means waking up on mornings when the weight in your chest feels immovable and somehow putting one foot in front of the other anyway. It means letting the pain sculpt you instead of shattering you, choosing transparency over comfort, accountability over pride. Lumina was never perfect. We made beautiful, laughable, costly mistakes. For every app launch that went viral, there were 2 that crashed. For every toast, a sleepless night. Our spirit was born not in momentary triumphs, but in all the quiet recoveries. Each time the world told us we wouldn't make it, we learned to answer not with certainty, but with determined curiosity. Maybe not yet, but we're still here. Trust, I know now, is less a gift than a garden. It takes intention, weeding, learning to notice the soil, and nurturing what you want to grow. For a while, injustice tempted me to become smaller, to treat everyone as a potential threat, to keep my circle impenetrable. But trust, real trust, can't flourish in isolation. I had to risk believing again, in colleagues who'd seen me at my worst, in allies who challenged me, and most painfully, in my own worth beyond the company's branding or another's loyalty. Resilience is not merely enduring hardship or bouncing back. It's letting yourself be altered by difficulty without abandoning your essence. Somewhere in the last year, my heartbreak became something more than a wound. It became a vantage point, a place to see new possibilities, to spot the quiet strengths in others that hardship reveals. Betrayal cut deep, but so did the grace of those who chose to stay, to forgive, to risk honesty in every awkward town hall, candid one-on-one, or uncertain product launch. I saw in my team moments of vulnerability that redefined strength, not pretending to be unbreakable, but showing up even when afraid or ashamed. That is the culture I wish for Lumina and for myself. One where dissent is not a threat, but a reason to grow. Where kindness outlasts cynicism. Where possibility is chosen, day after uncertain day. As for Jessica, she is a story I am still learning to carry. Our friendship was real, flawed, and meaningful. Her betrayal, thorough and devastating. But lately, I find room inside myself for both gratitude for what we built together and forgiveness. Not to excuse, but to release. That part of the past is not destined to be the only story I tell myself about trust. No ending is ever clean. There are days I pass the cafe where we drafted our first wireframes and feel both pride and grief. Nights when I reread old texts and wonder if second chances are ever truly possible. The truth? Healing is not linear. Some scars will always catch the light. Lumina's future is as uncertain as ever, but now, uncertainty feels like possibility instead of doom. The team has grown into a family of misfits, some new, some returned, some who learned to accept one another's histories without flinching. We host open feedback sessions where laughter, frustration, and candor coexist. We celebrate mistakes as much as milestones. We know now, the real foundation of our company isn't code or capital. It's the stubborn kind of trust that grows from shared, imperfect stories. If tomorrow I lose it all again, I have a roadmap: vulnerability, principled action, forgiveness when possible, and the unglamorous courage of starting over. No title changes that. No public win or loss negates it. So wherever you begin, or begin again, guard your hope with realism, but don't let cynicism own your heart. Choose the people who tell you the truth. Apologize when you fail them. Let yourself be changed, but not embittered by what you cannot control. And never, ever let the world's hardest lesson convince you that you are too broken to trust or to dream again. With honesty and unfinished hope, Anna Parker. She put down the pen, feeling lighter, not because the burden had been lifted, but because she had chosen again to carry it with intention. The cherry blossoms outside whispered of seasons both fleeting and resilient. Anna knew Lumina's journey and her own would sprawl onward into unmapped tomorrows, sometimes tangled, sometimes bright. The chapter, she realized, was not a closure, but a reminder. Beginnings and endings are rarely neat, but if set upon a foundation of truth, trust, and resilience, even the most broken stories could plant the seeds of something new. And as the city hummed, Anna allowed herself a rare smile, one not built on certainty, but on faith in what they'd built, lost, and would build again, together or apart.